Friends, in the previous class, we have studied about the pollen-pistil interaction. So the pollen grain comes out of the anther after digestion of anther and it will migrate to the surface of the pistil. It is the stigma. So how the pollen grain after its maturity comes to the surface of the stigma. So the male and female gametes produce pollen grain and embryo sac respectively. We know that the male gamete is produced in the anther and it is the pollen grain, and the female gamete is produced inside the embryo sac. And we know that pollen grain as well as the female gamete or the embryo sac both are non-motile. So they need to meet each other. The pollen grain need to travel to the surface of the pistil for the pollen-pistil interaction, after which only the formation of fruit and seed takes place. So after the formation of a mature embryo sac, the pollen grains lands on the surface of the pistil, the stigma, and travels through the pollen tube to the embryo sac. So before the pollen-pistil interaction, the pollen needs to reach the pistil, the surface of the pistil. So the action of the pollen grain to reach the pistil or the stigma is known as pollination. Pollination is the mechanism to achieve the objective of transfer of pollen grains to stigma of a pistil. So it is the mechanism by which the pollen grain will come and land on the surface of the pistil here. So how the pollen grain travels to the surface of the pistil? Let's see. So pollination, we need to understand, it is the mechanism by which the pollen grain from the anther of a flower travels to the surface of pistil, that is the stigma. So the process, the mechanism is called pollination, and the agents who makes pollination successful are called the pollinating agents. So students, look at the board now. Pollination. Pollination is of three different types. How many? Three. So what are the three different types of pollination? Remember, the three different types of pollination comes under two different categories again. So one is the self-pollination. Self-pollination, another is your cross-pollination. Self and cross-pollination. Clear? So the self-pollination has two different parts. They are autogamy. The first one is autogamy and the second one is geitonogamy. Okay? In the cross-pollination, we have a single type, that is genogamy. The third type, that is genogamy. Clear? Genogamy is also known as allogamy, remember. So the self-pollination means what? When the pollination takes place within the flowers of same plant. When the pollination takes place inside a single plant, within the different flowers of a single plant or the same flower of a plant, it is called self-pollination. Self means within that plant, within a specific plant. So the first one, autogamy, remember, in case of the first one, autogamy, the flower is same. The flower is same. Means plant is same and the flower is also same. In that case, it is called autogamy. Second one, the geitonogamy. In this case, the flowers are different. Flowers different, but of same plant, because the geitonogamy also comes under self-pollination. So the difference is that in autogamy, the pollination takes place between the same flower in the same plant. But in case of geitonogamy, the pollination takes place between different flowers but in a specific plant, in the same plant. Next, the genogamy is a type of cross pollination, because here the flowers are different and the plants are also different. So here pollination takes place between different flower of again different plants. So this process takes place between different flower of different plants. So it is cross pollination. In this case, pollinating agents are required because the pollen grain needs to travel to another plant, to a different flower of a different plant. So the pollen grain need to travel with the pollinating agent. So in this case, the pollinating agent is required. Here also in case of geitonogamy, the pollinating agent is required because the flowers are different, maybe of the same plant, but the flowers are different. So after the dehiscence of anther, the pollen grain needs to travel to another flower. That is the reason why in these two cases, genogamy and geitonogamy, the pollinating agents are required. Clear? So another thing we have to know that the pollen release to the stigma. In case of autogamy, the pollen grain matures and the stigma matures at the same time because it occurs within the same flower, in the same flower. So the flower should mature the anther and stigma at the same time, means the embryo sac and the anther, the pollen grain should mature at the same time. That is the reason why successful autogamy is possible. So in this type of pollination is found in case of plants like viola and oxalis. Clear? So again, if we will go in detail about the autogamy, the process of autogamy, there are two different types of flowers. One is the chesmogamous flower, another is the cleistogamous flower. So let's see in detail about the first type of pollination or the first type of self-pollination, which is the autogamy. So remember, in this case, there are two different types of flowers. The first one is the chesmogamous flower. Chesmogamous. So in case of chesmogamous flower, the anther and stigma are exposed to outside. Anther and stigma, anther, stigma, exposed to outside. But in the second case, that is cleistogamous flower, in case of cleistogamous flowers, the anther and stigma are closed. They are closed. Okay, so they do not open at all. The cleistogamous flower do not open at all. And remember, the autogamous, in case of autogamous flowers, no chance of cross pollination is there. In case of cleistogamous particularly, as the flower is closed, means the anther and stigma are closed, no chance of the foreign pollen grains to migrate into the pistil of the flower. So here it is bound to occur autogamy. Clear? So remember another thing, flower produces seed set even in the absence of pollinators in this case. So pollinators are not required here and the flower can produce fruit and seed because the anther of the same flower will land on the stigma of that flower. Remember, plants bearing both the chesmogamous as well as cleistogamous flowers are known as chesmocleistogamous flower. They are known as chesmocleistogamous. And the example is very well known rice because it bears both the closed type of flowers as well as the open type of flowers. So it is called chesmocleistogamous. So this is all about our autogamy or the first type of self-pollination. Now we will discuss about the second one, that is geitonogamy. So the second type of self-pollination or the second type of pollination is geitonogamy, where the pollen grain travels to the stigma of different flowers of same plant. So let's discuss about the second case, that is Getonogamy. In this case, the pollen grain travels to the stigma of same plant, but different flower. In this case, the flower is different, but the plant is same, so it is also a type of self-pollination. So this brings genetically different types of pollen grain on the stigma. Genetically different pollen grains, different pollens, because the flowers are different. So here genetically they are different. The pollen grain on the stigma, the male and female part are different. Okay, so in this case, as the flowers are different, so pollinating agents are required or not? Pollinating agents are required because the pollens needs to travel to another flower, maybe of the same plant but different flower. So the pollinating agents here, pollinating agents are required. Clear? So this is about the getonogamy, the second type of self-pollination. So self-pollination here takes place because the plants are same but different flower. So it is self-pollination. As in autogamy, there is same flower of same plant, here different flower of the same plant. So one thing we have to note down here, that is in dioecious plant. In dioecious plants, the getonogamy and autogamy or self-pollination is must, because they are unisexual. So they need the autogamy and naturally the autogamy and getonogamy are prevented because they are unisexual flowers. The autogamy as well as getonogamy both are prevented in case of unisexual flowers, because when the plant is male plant, it will only carry the male reproductive part of the flower, and when it is female plant, it will only carry the female reproductive part. So only cross pollination occurs in case of unisexual flowers. Clear? So now let's discuss about the cross pollination or the genogamy. So let's discuss about the third type of pollination, that is genogamy or the cross pollination. Genogamy, it is a type of cross pollination. Why? Because here the pollination occurs between flowers of different plants. Okay, so it is called cross pollination. So here in this case, the pollen grain from anther travels to the flower of different plant. Here the plant is different and obviously the flower is also different. Okay, so this is cross pollination where the anther is from different plant and the female reproductive part, stigma, is also from a different plant. Clear? So here the genetical difference is possible. So genetically different pollen grains comes to the stigma. Here genetically different pollen grains can travel to a genetically different pollen grain, genetically different female plant. So here a new variety is possible due to recombination. Clear? So as the plants are different, so recombination is possible in cross pollination. So remember, it is also called allogamy. The genogamy is also called allogamy. Okay, why? Because allo means other and gammus means marriage between other, different plant or other plant. So it is called allogamy, and geno means strange. A strange variety is there with which the pollen grain and the female reproductive part pistil will interact to form a strange type of or different type of flower with new characters. So remember, here in this case in cross pollination, it is very important in genetic point of view. So in order to ensure genetic recombination, it ensures genetic recombination. Genetic recombination is possible in case of cross pollination because here different plants are involved. Different plants are involved. Due to different plants, the genetically difference or genetic recombination is possible by which different variety can be obtained. So this is all about the three different types of pollination: our autogamy, geitonogamy and xenogamy or allogamy. Okay, so this is all about the three different types of pollination. Two are the self-pollination, autogamy and geitonogamy, and the third one, that is xenogamy, is our cross-pollination. So now we are going to discuss about the various pollinating agents. So what are the agents of pollination? So let's see who are the agents responsible for causing pollination. So there are actually two. We can categorize them into two types. The pollination takes place by pollinating agents. So who are responsible for causing pollination? They are divided into two categories. Number one, we can write that is biotic, and number two is abiotic. So biotic means it involves living organisms, mostly animals and birds. So animals. And the abiotic includes mostly two different abiotic factors, and they are wind and water. Wind and water. So wind and water are responsible for causing pollination, and these are abiotic factors. Animals are causing pollination, and they are biotic factors. Okay. So first we will discuss about the biotic factors. What are the biotic factors? The animals. Okay. So when the animals are responsible for causing pollination, it is called zoophily. It is called biotic. It is called zoophily. Okay. So what are the different animals who helps in the process of pollination? Let's understand first. So normally insects, birds, bats and snails are responsible for causing pollination. So insects are very important pollinating agents. When insects are responsible for causing pollination, it is called entomophily. It is called entomophily. When the pollinating agents are insects. So this is most important type of pollinating agents. The second one, when birds are responsible for causing pollination, it is called ornithophily. It is called ornithophily. When birds are responsible for causing pollination. Likewise, the bats and snails are also responsible for causing pollination. Clear? So now let's go for the abiotic type of pollination, where the wind and water are responsible for causing pollination. So what are the abiotic or non-living factors? It is the wind and water. So normally wind and water causes pollination. So when wind is responsible for causing pollination, it is called anemophily. It is called anemophily when the wind causes pollination, and it is called hydrophily when the cause is water. Hydrophily when the pollination is caused by water. Clear? So the pollen grains in this case, where the wind and water are the pollinating agent, the pollen grains are normally light, are not very heavy, so that it can be easily blown by the water and wind. The pollen grains should be light and non-sticky. They should not stick to a particular area. Okay, so the pollen grains are very light and non-sticky, whereas the stigma needs to be a large feathery in structure. So here large feathery stigma are there, and light non-sticky pollens are there. Light non-sticky pollens, large feathery stigma are there in case of flowers. And this type of pollination is very common in case of grasses. So in different species of grasses, the pollination takes place by means of wind and water. Okay, so here there is no need of the flower need not produce any nectar. There is no need of any color of the flower, because the color and nectar is there in flower only to attract the biotic pollinating agents, not the abiotic ones. So in case of grasses or the different plants where abiotic agents are responsible for pollination, the flower need not secrete nectar, or it need not be very colorful to attract. Okay, but remember the water. When hydrophily, the pollination is done by water, or hydrophilic pollination is seen, remember it is very rare and found in case of lower plants like your pteridophytes, bryophytes and algae, and water hyacinth. Exceptional cases are also there. Water hyacinth and water lily. In them, pollination takes place by insects or by wind. Though they are found in water, but the pollination takes place by wind or the insects. Why? Because the flower are present above the water body in case of water lily and water hyacinth. Clear? So as the flowers are above water body, the pollination takes place by wind or by the help of the biotic factor or the insects. Clear? So this is all about the abiotic pollinating agents and biotic pollinating agents. Clear? So now we are going to discuss about what are the other features. Let's discuss about the flowers. In most of the flowering plants, the animals are used. The animals are used for pollination in most of the flowering plants. So remember, most flowering plants use animals like bees, because we know that the bees collect honey from the nectar from the flowers. Bees, flies, and then wasps, ant, moths, birds, bats are responsible for causing pollination in different flowering plants. And remember, the insect pollinated plants when the flowers are very large. So when the insects are responsible for causing pollination, the flowers need to be very large in order to attract the insects or animals. And remember, they need to be colorful and should have a fragrant. They need to be colorful and should have fragrant. And these are required in case of the insect pollinating plants, because these things attracts the insects. Another thing is also there, that is the nectar. Rich in nectar. When the nectars are present, nectar is present, the insects are attracted towards the plant. So the nectar should be produced by the flower. One more thing is there, which is mentioned in the NCERT, which is very interesting also. We know that the flowers get pollinated by insects, and sometimes insects also get profit from the flower by laying eggs inside the flower. For example, the amorphophallus flower. The amorphophallus flower is the tallest flower, very well known, and it is 6 feet height itself. The flower itself is 6 feet height, and it is a very safe place for the insects to lay eggs inside it. So the insects prefer to lay egg inside the tall 6 feet tall flower, amorphophallus. Okay. Another thing is also there, the interlink between the life cycle of a plant and an insect. So here it is mentioned that the moth and yucca plant and moths. The moths lays eggs inside the flower of the plant, and the plant get pollinated by the moths. So the eggs of the moths remain inside the flower and develop. After the development, it will come out, and the yucca plant get pollinated by the moths. So both are dependent on each other for completing their life cycle.